Hello everyone and welcome back to another Dreamscape Horsemanship video. Today I am standing here with Twiggy. She is a 5-year-old paint mare originally trained and started for Western Pleasure. I'm just going to quickly put the bridle on here first to keep the bit warm. The weather's a little chilly out here today, so we're just doing some light work with her just to introduce the spurs, which is the topic of this video. So, Twiggy was started Western Pleasure, and her owners want her to be suitable to be used as a beginner horse for their 2 daughters and for themselves. So she's already plenty calm enough for that, but in order to allow her to be used as a lesson horse, she has to know some lateral movements like turn on the forehand, leg yielding. She's just being a bit of a brat. And there's a few other lateral movement stuff she needs to be able to learn before she can go on to be a really good lesson horse for these clients of mine. So what I'm doing with her this go round of training is to introduce all those lateral aids to her. And because she was predominantly started Western Pleasure, when I first started riding her, she was actually very unsure about leaving the rail. So now that we have that under control, I can take her anywhere in this pasture, and she will continue along as if there's nothing wrong. Beforehand, she was very frightened to even move away from the rail, and she didn't have any lateral movement at all. So that's the entire reason I want to introduce spurs to her, is so that I can have a little bit stronger leg cue and a more precise leg cue in order to help her move her shoulders around and move her hind end around, and just for more control over her front end and her hind end in order to help her learn things like the leg yield. She actually side passes really nicely. It's just the forward and sideways movement required in a leg yield that she is having trouble with. And she also has a very thick winter coat right now. It's getting to be the nice time of the Alberta winter where we're getting some pretty chilly temperatures off and on. So that's another reason that I need to use some spurs on hers, because my leg cue, it just isn't getting through to her through her really thick winter coat. So I'm just gonna readjust my scarf here and fiddle around with a few other pieces of equipment before I actually show you guys how to introduce the spurs to a horse. So I'm under the impression that because she was started Western Pleasure and she can hold a frame pretty nicely, so I'm assuming she's probably been ridden in spurs before, but I'm still going to go about introducing them to her as if she's one of my green horses that I've never handled before and that I have no clue how she's going to respond to spurs. So the spurs I have with me today are just my basic medium shank rowel spur. I showed them in my previous videos on different types of spurs. They were the 12-point star rowel with squared off edges. There's very little space between the points of the rowel, so it makes for a very nice introductory spur. The rowel is very mild, and the medium shank is kind of your average, so it's going to give me the perfect amount of extra pressure I need to get her to perform her lateral movements, and it's also going to be able to get through all this thick winter hair that we're having trouble with. So, how I want to go about introducing the spurs is I don't want to have them on my boots and then just hop right on and go, because if she all of a sudden spooks, and I'm actually just going to bring spurs closer here so you guys can see what the rowel looks like. And if I take this and just rub it on my hand like I discussed in my previous spur video, I'm just pulling all the hair off here, I can't feel each individual point on the spurs, and it's because the space between them is very minimal and they're nice squared off edges. So when I roll it up and down my hand here, I can't feel each individual point, pardon me. I just feel a solid rowel surface. So that's going to be great for her as an introductory spur, and it's going to be really good for just general riding purposes without getting super complicated with my aids. I really just want her to work with her lateral movements. So a nice medium shank with just a basic rowel actually is going to work really well for her. And because she's worn spurs before, or I'm assuming she has, I am pretty confident that this type of spur is going to work for her and work for what I want to do with her. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold my spur in my right hand. I'm going to shorten my feel on the lead rope here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to approach her side, and I'm going to simply push the spur into her side, exactly where the spur would be if I was sitting in the saddle and the spur was attached to my boot. And the response I'm looking for is for her to just respond to that by yielding away from the pressure. So she's going to yield her hindquarters away, and she's going to do it calmly, nice even steps. She's not going to jump forward, jump back, or jump sideways, whether it's away from me or on top of me. So I'm just checking my cinch here to make sure that's good first. And so again, I'm just going to stick it into her side. And if there's no response, I'm going to push it a little bit harder. Wonderful. That is a perfect response. She didn't fling her hindquarters away. She didn't jump sideways. She didn't jump forward or back. She simply just responded by yielding away from that pressure. And that one response is telling me that she's either worn spurs before, which is a very big possibility, or she's just okay with that extra bit of pressure on her side, and maybe it's because she has such a thick hair coat. Maybe if we were doing this in the middle of summer, her response might be a little bit different. But I'm really here having to push that into her side. So in that case, I'm just going to roll the spur up her side just a little bit, not way up her side, but I'm just going to roll it about an inch up. And that allows her to feel what the rowel is going to feel like when I roll it. And there's really no need to roll a spur on a horse's side unless they're really not responding to your leg, because she's backing up here, so I'm just going to step back. And I'm going to start rolling it on her side now because there's still no response. Really push it into her side and roll it. So she gave me one little step, so I'm going to be okay with that. I just wanted her to yield away from the pressure, and even though she only took one step, she did yield away. So you want to do this on both sides, so I'm going to go along to the other side here in a second, but I want her response on this left side to be a little nicer. So I'm going to push in, I'm going to roll, keep rolling, and I'm going to keep that pressure there, and I'm not releasing it until she moves her hind end, which she did, so then I release that pressure. That pressure is not coming off of her side until she responds. Now, if she decided suddenly that she was going to jump sideways, then I would just go back to sacking her out to the spur and just lightly applying the pressure and wait for her to give that nice, calm, relaxed response. So again, on this side, she's having the same issue we had on the left, where she just doesn't, it's not that she's not responding, she just doesn't really want to yield away from the pressure. So I'm just going to hold that spur in her side, and if she's really not responding, then I'm going to roll it up her side. So she did yield sideways there, but then she took a step back, so I'm just going to angle myself a little bit more towards her hip. I'm rolling it here. You saw her shoulder kind of twitch. That was just her getting a little irritated. Her mom was walking by now. And so her response there was beautiful. She didn't jump sideways, she didn't jump forward, jump back. So I'm pretty confident that these are going to work. So the next step in testing that is to put them on my boots and hop on, and we'll just walk her in some open rein circles to the left and to the right. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up her face. I'm just going to explain that while I'm getting the spurs on my boots, because I'm not sure how much time my camera has left in the batteries. It's pretty cold out here. So, these are kind of difficult to put on and talk at the same time, and try and balance myself. So, the response I'm looking for once I mount up is I'm going to bring my rein out to the side, like we did with Blue when we were training Blue how to steer. That we're just going to bring our nice open rein out to the side, and while we're doing that, I'm just going to push my outside spur into her and ask her just to turn a nice circle. Then when I have her on a circle, I'm just going to collect her up a bit, squeeze her with my legs, apply that spur pressure, and just get her to round up a little bit. And if she can respond to that spur pressure nicely, then I'm going to ask for a turn on the haunches. So it'll be, turn on the forehand, which is exactly the same exercise as what we did on the ground here with me applying my spur in her side and just asking for her to yield her hindquarters away. Once I'm in the saddle, it would be exactly the same process. I just hold my spur in, wait for her to yield her hindquarters away, and if she can do that and collect up, and she can turn nicely off the cue of my spur, then I know that probably she's going to be fairly confident responding to the trot, to the lope, and hopefully for our leg yields once we get around to asking for the leg yields with the spurs. So I'm just going to arrange my reins here. I'm going to bring her over here so I can unclip the lead. Let Mama walk by again. And when you're wearing spurs, especially if the horse is new to spurs, and like I said, I'm going about introducing Twiggy to spurs as if she's never had them on before, but in the back of my head, I kind of assume that she has, but I'm not letting that change the way I'm going about working with her today. So, it doesn't matter what stage your horse is when it comes to how long they've been wearing spurs, but you want to be extra careful now when you're mounting up that you don't bump your heel into their side when you're putting your left foot in the stirrup, because then you're going to spur your horse. You don't want to bump their hind end with your right foot and your right spur when you're swinging over, so you kind of have to lift your leg just a little bit higher over their hindquarters. And then again, when you're putting your right foot in the stirrup, you don't want to bump their right side with your right spur and have the same result where they'd be spurred forward. So it's just a little bit more leg control and a little bit more conscious thought on where you're putting your legs and your spurs. And of course, just a short shank wouldn't be too much trouble. A medium shank, you're getting into a little bit of that kind of having to be cautious of where you're putting your leg. The long shank spurs that we talked about in the Western Spur video is really where, and now I just have to work on getting her to stand still here. She heard the ring of my spur, so I'm just going to sack her out to that sound. And then I'm just going to get her to hold still here when I put my foot in the stirrup. And I'm just going to put her back to where she was standing. Work on getting that nice, relaxed, neutral position. And I'm just going to stand here for a second and then continue on. So even if, like today, my goal is just to get her accustomed to the spurs, and we're going to work a little bit more on our lateral aids. But that right there, when she tried to walk off right away, that's just another training challenge that has presented itself. I'm just trying to turn on the haunches here to see how she's going to yield her shoulders, which was beautiful. Might not have been a completely correct turn on the haunches in the technical aspect where she didn't have her foot planted exactly, but she did yield her shoulders away from the spur, which is what I was looking for. So here I'm doing those nice open rein circles, pushing with my outside spur, just getting her to yield to that spur pressure. And so far she's doing really well. She's acting as if the spurs aren't even there, even when I ask. We'll see how she backs up. Alright, so I'm going to leave it there for today, folks, for the video anyway. I'm going to continue working on with her, and I will catch you guys with the next video. And let's give Twiggy a big thanks for being an excellent model for today's video. And I'll catch you guys later.